All right, going once, twice. I think we are recording. Making sure we are. Can someone? Yes, I think we are. Can someone confirm this is recording? I see you giving me a thumbs up. You see this recording on your end as well?
Yes, I do.
Excellent. Thank you. I just want to make sure we have some recording for people that cannot join, could not join. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good part of day, basically, to everyone. Thank you for joining. This is the large scale Scrum of New York City meetup. And today we are going to be discussing the topic that is probably on minds of many, but not frequently spoken openly and explicitly. Uh, this is about HR related matters. I call them nuances. Stuff that is related to HR and HR dynamics sometimes is left out of big, important conversations. So we kind of want to bring it back to the loop and make sure it's not left out and it's not um, trivialized. Okay. So what I will be using today, I will be using the coaching tool, which I refer to as a coaching tool. This is a system modeling technique. It's called a causal loop diagram to expose some of the invisible dynamics, not always visible. I would say they're not completely invisible. They're not as readily easily visible dynamics, specifically around and about HR related matters. Okay, so I am sharing my screen. I'm using my Miro board, and I will be sharing these graphics at later point with you. I need to chop it up because they're a big image. Will be posted it to the link that I sent to everyone in the chat room. Okay. And as you may know, when I speak, it's very informal. So if you really have an urge to ask a question, just raise it. Otherwise, we'll open up to for Q&A at a later point. At the end of the discussion. Okay. So I would like to start with the frequently seen system optimizing goal, something that we sometimes hear or sense or see that comes from the top of the house or from senior management or from other organizational structures that are in charge of setting, setting the rest of the organization on their journey, right? And this goal oftentimes sounds like we need to increase individuals' efficiency and performance, right? It is typically related to HR, and that's what we hear often. This is related to HR norms and policies and values. So let's start with that. Um, so by the way, the causal diagram, a bit of our annotation here. Pluses imply, I'm using today, there are different ways to annotate your diagram. A plus means you are amplifying the, you're amplifying something. So for instance, this is a variable and this is a system variable, and plus means we're amplifying it. Minus implies we're either constraining it or just minimizing it. So consider this as a plus and a minus. I also introduced another scheme, color coding scheme, just for the ease. Something that's green, supposedly is something we want more of in the system. Logically, it's good stuff. Whereas something that's pinkish is probably something we want less of in the system, which is not a good thing, based on my personal common sense. Um, these red stickies mean something else. Typically, they're also not so good. So take color coding at its face value. There is no hard rule how to use color coding. It's like it's to your liking. Okay. So without any further ado, let's take a look what it looks like. When we stipulate this as a goal and to increase individual efficiency and performance, it will have an amplifying effect on the likelihood that first line managers promote and sometimes even enforce individual performance. Okay, let me just I'll use one path and they'll come back and I'll bring this all together. Another outcome of this, another system variable that is being amplified by this goal would be likelihood that recruiters are looking only for high efficiency single specialty workers. And this is maybe may requires a little more unpacking. Why is this so? Well, because when we look for high efficiency and high performance, we often end up with people that are very skilled, very very advanced in one specific skill set, but not in other skill sets. Okay, so this is a secondary outcome. But let me just follow through this one. When we have this promotion of individual performance in the system, and a lot of it, the percentage of workers with high degree of specialization in one skin in one skill only will most likely be. So I'm gonna ask you kindly to mute yourself, Alex. Okay, so think of these variables. If one goes up and the other one goes up, you would typically use a plus sign, right? So this in the increase in the likelihood of first line management promoting individual performance will most likely translate into a high percentage of workers with high degree of specialization in one skill. Now, let me follow through this. Oscar, the same to you. Thank you. Keep yourself on mute, folks. So with the high percentage of workers with high degree of specialization in one skill only, most likely this will lead to the increase of the internal feeling, hey, I'm secure about my role because I am a specialist, I'm an expert, and no one can come close to what I can do. So I'm the single point of failure. If I'm not around, most likely this effort is not going to go through. So single function specialty and high degree of expertise in one skill only would typically lead to this a high security about the role. Now, I put something in parentheses here, and those of you have done some even light coding would understand this symbol is not equal to. One of the ways to describe it's not an equal. Role security and job security are not the same two things. So when we say role security, we oftentimes refer to something that is very local optimized for one person's role. A job security is someone's ability to retain their position and collect compensation. So those two are not the same. Now, assuming that this is not a good thing to have, when someone is very certain, very assured that his or her role is not going to go away, which oftentimes leads to local optimization, this may lead to too many roles with only few responsibilities per role. And we oftentimes refer to this as a local optimization. I'm a developer, I'm a front-end developer only, I'm not touching back-end. I'm a BA only, I'm just writing BRDs or analysis stories. I'm just an architect, I write PowerPoint decks about what architecture should look like. No one really is doing anything else other than their single specialty. With this stuff being in excess in this. So in other words, if you have lots of roles with very few responsibilities and lots of local optimization per role, naturally the number of people that are involved in the organizational structure would be higher. Okay, which is another way of saying your organizational complexity will be high. Again, this is in pink, and I said before in my coding, color coding language, pink isn't something you want to have more of in the system. It's just not a good thing. Now, because of this, we may have a higher degree of fear among the rest of the people that they may end up being downsized, because this is just natural. Your organization has grown out of proportion, has become big, inflated, too many roles, very few responsibilities per role. Everyone is very locally optimized. Now what? Well, this now what may turn into forced reduction. Now, please do not confuse the two. Organizational descaling, which is much more methodical, thought through, and gradual process of flattening org structures. Forced reduction is typically one of the surgical incisions, right? A decision is being made and organizations get reduced in the number of people, and oftentimes with some not so great roles, some great people go as well. So we've seen this movie before many times. So forced reduction is never perceived by employees as a good thing. Now, this will, before we go any further, let me say this is another variable that may strongly amplify this transition. Bad earnings, problems like COVID, political, economic instability will have, uh, will have, um, I'm sorry, we need to mute people. Please mute yourself, Oscar. I think it's coming from you. So this variable by itself isn't a good thing, and it will amplify um, this relationship also from not so good to not so good. So consider under certain conditions, this is going to be even more of a factor, more of a drastic situation, right? Now, this alone, of course, is not a good thing, and it will lead to the increase of internal competition and the mindset of me versus you. I mean, I think it's, and again, everything that we do here today, and any kind of system model is always subjective, and it's based on someone's perception, and it's best if a few people do it together, and then if so, it would be biased to those people. So you may consider this, well, this is biased to Gene's views, perhaps. I try to stay as objective as I can. And of course, I invite you to challenge this or maybe work this through in your respective organizational structures. But for whatever it's worth, with this fear in place, we oftentimes see an increase in the degree of internal competition. Because if we're all part of the same organization where we have a fear of being let go, then of course everyone is, looking out for their best interest, and people just are naturally selfish. That's how humans were born, right? Um, Let me say something else on this at this juncture. The value of monetary incentives that are being put on individual performance, and many organizations do that, is going to strongly amplify this next relationship. And this next relationship is strength of working relationship. Now, this is green, and I color coded for a reason in green because I think strength of working relationship is a good thing. Now, degree of internal competition is going to kind of, put a stress on it. So that's why we have a minus here. So this is going to lead to the decrease of this one. Every time we see a plus, it means one variable goes up in value, another variable goes up in value. When we have minus, it's the opposite. Okay. One of my fingers.
Gene, question.
Yes, Holly.
It's Holly. Hi.
Hey.
Is there any significance to the weight of those arrowed lines?
I was about to say, yeah. So one of the unwritten guides of this annotation, when you have like a thick arrow, it means more dramatic impact. You may put a multiple pluses, but just for visualization purposes, I put arrows. But you're right, it's very arbitrary. Yeah, like if you do it in a whiteboard, you're just gonna take a dry eraser and make that arrow very thick.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Sure. So value of monetary incentives here was going to be an amplifier to this bad transition. And I'm sorry, this is not a really trend. This is not a transition. This is a cause and effect relationship. We have an upside, an upstream variable and a downstream variable. So this is a cause and this is an effect. By the way, when we do system modeling, we care about causation, not so much correlation. In fact, we don't care about correlation. Two ad hoc independent events taking place independently of each other, most likely they just happen. Like you can't really argue that one leads to another. Here, we could argue that one may lead to another. Now, let me take this further. Strength of working relationships by itself is a great thing. We do not agree. This may also lead to an increase in employee happiness and retention rate. And we know of companies out there where when you do a survey and people being genuinely asked, would you like to stay with this company for until you retire? And the answer is yes. And the same kind of survey, if being asked of another company, employees, they will probably, if they feel safe enough to answer this question, they will say, well, this is just my next thing. I'm just going to do it for the next couple of years. And I just don't feel it's the right place for me. I'm just getting by and I'm going to jump the ship. So how do you make sure people are stuck around for longer? And, of course, retention rate, happiness factor, and people sticking together for longer is a huge plus. In fact, maybe I need to make this arrow just a little heavier. It's going to have a positive impact on likelihood of achieving success by adopting Scrum. Because in Scrum, one of the things we want in Scrum would be long-lived teams, right? There are some other things we want about Scrum teams, but long living together, being stuck together for a long time, so you can cross-pollinate and normalize and learn from each other. We want more of that. So this is a good thing. Let me, so this is just one leg of this journey, of this map. Let me give you a few more pieces to it. So with the same very individual efficiency, individual performance and personal efficiency and personal performance goal, there will be an increased, watch how I'm discussing this, watch how I'm saying this, an increased likelihood, because we're increasing it with a plus, increased likelihood that recruiters are looking only for high efficiency single specialty workers. Now, this by itself is a great thing. Quality of agile education, which includes, by the way, HR. We don't marginalize. We don't treat HR as, oh, they are just untouchable. This is untouchable area. We cannot go there. We actually embrace them. We bring them into the conversation. And with this come some other challenges we may see. Sometimes by educating HR, we get a great, they can be a great partner into this, but also they can do a bit of a, for the lack of a better word, they can slow things down, right? In fact, HR by itself is an organizational structure, and if you simplify and eradicate some processes, you may potentially be putting HR people in the position when they feel, well, what is it there? What am I going to do? I mean, I have been neck deep involved in the performance appraisal process, or in some other process that we're now simplifying. So you have to take it with a grain of salt, right? Depending where you stand, this is where you're gonna. Depending where you sit, this is where you're gonna stand, right? Next one down from here would be what? If we have this variable in place at high, two things may happen. Percentage of hard workers, generalists, as we sometimes refer to them as T-shaped people, is going to be lower. So when we naturally and explicitly are looking for single specialty, high efficiency workers, we're sort of downplaying the need of having more generalists. And by the way, someone who is a generalist, or someone who is a generalist is not necessarily not able to perform one duty very well. A generalist implies that there's something that this person can do really, really well, and there's some other things they can do relatively well, and they're willing to learn. So, like for instance, a specialist does not necessarily mean this person does not know anything else. A specialist means this person is specialized in one thing, but he or she also has a breadth of expertise. But all in all, with this factor, with this variable being high, it will put a constraint on the percentage of hard workers, generalists. Also, there was I would think it's a secondary and unrelated to this. Well, it's actually related, but not, we need to explain how it's related. Likelihood of having a career path that encourages learning secondary skills. I'm actually questioning myself. I think it's a little stronger here, right? What does it really mean? If you create a career path that encourages learning secondary and tertiary skills, you shall see more of it. It's almost the way, the way I would say it is this: behaviors you promote are behaviors you shall see. So for example, if you created a career path such as developer level 1, developer level 2 and 3 and 4, depending on the number of skills they have, you would amplify the importance of learning new skills to get to higher level, to get to higher pay. However, the flip side is true too. If you said after developer, you become a manager, and then you're going to become a manager's manager, then most likely at the moment someone becomes a manager, they will feel, okay, well, maybe I should stop learning new skills. This is not what I'm being incentivized for. So the way you structure your career path, of course, will translate into what kind of people you retain, what kind of people you get from outside, what kind of people are interested in sticking around. Now, both of these are good things for Scrum, right? Whether you bring in um, good generalists and T-shaped individuals from outside, or you take care of your own people that are already inside and create a career path for them. In fact, you could argue that there is a transition, there is a relationship between this one and this one. Yes, sure. People that, in fact, maybe I should do it on the fly. There's some relationship here, I think. If you're bringing people from outside that are T-shaped, they will be probably more interested in. Well, let me remove this for now. I don't want to put down the air without thinking this out. But these two are on the positive side, right? So you can either hire people from outside with the skills you look for, or you can create a habitat, an environment internally that is supportive of healthy Scrum. Right. What else haven't we touched here? Let me take a look at the other potentially lateral to this goal. And it's also related to HR, because you'll see in a second why I'm saying this. If you have another goal, and this goal may often translate into a message that comes from the top of the house or from your senior management, and obviously cascades down to lower level managers. Hey, we need to improve, but we shouldn't be rocking the boat too much. It's almost like, yeah, we need to make some marginal improvements, but let's not, try to boil the ocean. It's almost like change without changing, right? What comes to mind immediately here, and this is, I'm going to leverage Larman's laws of organizational behavior. Number 4 law here, you can read it at your own pace, will dramatically impact this, because when wrong people are spearhead transformations, or people that are not necessarily interested in seeing significant systemic improvements, then you will always you will most likely have a lot of what's referred as broad and shallow transformation attempts. There is one image that maybe will help us understand this. This is a side image, right? This is a typical example. This is a graphic illustration of a broad and shallow. You got too much focus on best practices and cookbooks, agile processes, tools, operating models, metrics, all this stuff. We're not saying this is completely irrelevant. It has some relevance, some importance, but this is an example of focusing on things that are very trivial and very superficial. And typically this bubble will tell you what I'm saying by this, right? I'm stopping here because I hit something hard. The minute they hit something hard, they back off, right? They have enough to get to their next promotion. They can step off the wagon. Bandwagon is no longer of interest to them, the agile bandwagon. So this is something that potentially becomes a challenge here. So likelihood of trivializing and watering down the need of organizational redesign is typically the outcome of it. Because this isn't the intent of this sort of a this sort of a organizational transformation is not to systemically address organizational design problems, but just to create an illusion, touch them superficially. And this is where comes the HR element of this, right? We end up having old roles oftentimes mapped to agile roles based on a pay grade. This is something that may resonate with you. I mean, I'm actually amazed when I see a company that takes care of the HR database and actually introduces agile roles in the HR system, so that when people apply for the roles, they do not apply for some marginally related role that would then be later mapped to the agile role. You're applying for a project manager to then later realize, well, they asked me to do this Scrum mastering thing. And of course, at the end of the year, I'll be still appraised and evaluated as a manager, right? Because that Scrum thing, that Scrum master thing is just it's a temporary thing. It'll come and go. But the HR way of describing my role is still a project manager or a business analyst, for that matter, or a chief architect, as opposed to a senior developer with one of the skills, maybe a D skill here, is ability to architect a system, right? It could be just, a high degree of seniority in what they can do. And of course, if you have the SQL, you're not expected to read SQL here, but this is a way of, sometimes we see database tables being updated, right? You have an employee table, and if you have someone who is a senior project manager, they're going to make them into a senior agile coach, and a junior project manager is going to become our scrum master, and a business analyst is going to become a product owner. If this is what you see, of course, you need to raise a flag, right? Now, this is not a good thing. I put in color, so, and of course, it's going to slow down. It's going to, put a big stress on success of Scrum adoption. So look at some of these variables, that these green ones are really going to help you with Scrum adoption. Like, for instance, if you have a Scrum team that has team members that are, maybe a different level of seniority, but they are all, interested in learning more skills, and they have a career path that they share. Maybe they're different states of it. That's perfectly normal. That's going to be a big plus here. Of course, T-shaped individuals coming into your organization and joining teams initially, that's a plus. Likelihood that team members are interested in learning from each other, that's a big plus, because in fact, this and this come like a horse and carriage. A career path of this nature and attitude of this nature play together really well. Would you not agree? Right. Now, on the other hand, when you have this mapping approach to of old roles to new roles, it's not going to help with your Scrum adoption. In fact, it's going to ruin it. It's going to hurt it. So this is the bigger picture here, and I think I did mention the monetary incentives being a strong being a strong factor here, amplifying this not such a good transition. Badness decreases goodness, and amplifying this transition where badness amplifies badness. And I kind of use this, kind of loose language here, badness versus goodness, because you either want more of something or less of something. And the last thing I was gonna mention with regards to this model is what? Well, we are just exposing a small piece of the large organizational ecosystem. We're kind of focusing specifically on HR related matters. However, the dotted area here points to the rest of the system. So consider this being a small discussion, just about the small island in the middle of the ocean on Earth, or maybe the Earth itself. There's a solar system, organizational system, ecosystem, where other things may happen. So we may potentially map success of Scrum adoption to other things downstream. And of course, any of these variables may have direct impact on those. So think of this as a big system that has lots of superlinear relationships, not linear relationships. Okay, and many things will change the way, many variables will change the way they impact other variables during runtime. Sometimes we need to really think this through and map it out. And what may seem like it's a linear relationship becomes no longer a linear relationship when you have another variable coming in. Like for instance, here, maybe your relationship between this cause and this effect wasn't very highly pronounced, wasn't very strong. But today, because of adverse conditions we're under, it is being strongly amplified, right? Another way of saying is this: under normal conditions, an organization can afford being less efficient, more expensive in the way they operate, because they just make tons of money, right? The front office makes tons of money, so the back office can spend it as much as they want on a good day. And yeah, and sometimes we refer to this as the survival of the fittest, right? The Darwinian theory, right? Back in the days, millions and millions of years ago, when things were stable, the bigger the better, right? Dinosaurs used to run this world, but when things became more adverse and there was a climate change, the bigger and the heavier animals were under more stress. So under certain conditions, this becomes a significant factor, right? You can have a beautiful house on the beach, and as long as there is no hurricane or tsunami, you have the best place in the world. But the minute you have a storm coming, then you start worrying. Right. So I'm going to pause. And by the way, some of the references I shared in the um, chat, if you just scroll all the way to the top, you will have references to the system thinking page where you can read more about system thinking, as well as some of the pinpointed examples, additional examples of system modeling. So you can explore that or ask questions at a later point. But I'm happy to open up now and perhaps, and maybe we can turn this into a conversation. I see you pinging and I didn't read the chat yet, but feel free just to raise your hand and or just speak up. Any thoughts, sentiments, comments, or maybe disagreements, maybe. If you feel that very strongly that in your organization things are completely different, that would be interesting, right? In fact, everything. Yes, Stefan, yes.
Yes, I put my question in the chat, but what I'm interested in is looking at these constraints and opportunities. Agile focuses on self-organization of teams, and do you think that the current HR system is simply broken in that respect? Because as long as you recruit for roles and you say, I want X years experience doing this or that, I don't see how you get from there to self-organization. And in my own personal case, I work a lot with artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. And it requires a team approach, because the likelihood of finding somebody who has a graduate degree in math, who is also an excellent Linux system administrator, is going to be low. So you need to have those skills on your team. How does the HR process accommodate situations where
yeah, I'm with you, and I'm kind of going to a different place where I can grab a very relevant graphic. Hopefully I'm going to find it real quickly. If not, I'm just going to talk through it. But I am with you. So the short answer is, while I'm doing this, it's got to be somewhere there. Maybe I can't find it that easily. The short answer is, you're absolutely right. HR is neck deep involved into this. Now, what I can't find at the moment. So what HR is optimized at the moment, right? So of course, the exceptions and the exclusions of this. But when we refer to an organizational structure today, for the most, for many organizations, for majority of companies, it's an apex structure, top down, with lots of reporting lines and reporting, senior to junior, and there's a lot of coupling between promotions, compensations, and career and seniority, and how many people you have on the management. So for as long as these different variables are coupled, we may see this problem. So sometimes we just need to decouple them and see what happens then. For example,
Kátia,
the image I was
eu
looking
coloco o cabo para carregar o celular, ele liga no Zoom.
Okay.
O cara falou meu nome, Oscar.
I need to mute you. Sorry.
I think it's not to us.
That was in Portuguese, I think. So my reply to you, Stefan, would be the following. Yes, you're right. In Agile world, in Agile arena, we want teams to be self-organized and empowered, and not only self-organized and self-managed. No, I'm sorry, not only self-managed, but also self-organized. So what does it really mean? We don't create teams for teams. We create a habitat. We should be able to create an environment where teams come together, when people come together and can create themselves as teams, as opposed to being reliant on a more senior manager who is who's effectively enforcing who should be on what team. The way I usually create an analogy about this would be like, let's take an example of a high school class that wants to play basketball in the backyard, and they have a coach there standing by, right? You got maybe 30 people in a 20 people class, and they want to split like a 5 and 5 and 5 and 5. So they actually use common sense and democracy. How would you split a 20-man group into 4 teams that there was relatively same skill set, strength, speed, and capacity? Only on the very rare conditions should a coach step in and say, well, you move to this team and you move to this team. Typically we want people to self-organize, right? So the same approach would be with teams in agile environments. You want them to be not only self-managed, but also self-organized. And if your HR policies do not support autonomy, do not support self-management, self-organization, it will be, of course, a constraint. Like under certain organizational conditions, we ask managers to step back and to give autonomy to individuals so they can self-organize. There are other things that managers should be able and can and should be able to do facing outward, not as much. So it's kind of a longish answer. I was looking for a graphic that could support this theme. It's from Hackman's team model, and if I find it distinct, I'll definitely share it with you. Maybe I'll find
I think that also it's hard to find like T-shaped people, because like job sites are optimized, but specializations. For example, like backend developers, front-end developers, testers. Like
so Sebastian, you're absolutely right, and that's what this is. I found the image, by the way. This is sorry, I have to mute you. So you're absolutely right. Behaviors we incentivize are the behaviors we see, and also jobs that we put out there are the jobs that are going to be filled in. This is why HR element is so critical here, Sebastian. For example, if your managers beating the drums and looking for people that will be willing to learn new skills and new expertise, then it makes no sense to have job requisitions out there that read back-end Java developer, senior business analyst. It's almost ironic. It's almost ridiculous, right? You think of a bucket of water and you pour in water into the bucket, and someone just punched a hole in it, and the water just gushes out. What's the point of looking for people with multiple skills if you're explicitly recruiting individuals with single skills? And by the way, when they're recruited in, especially if these are full-time people, their job requisition, their role will say something very explicit, and they will be managed, and they will be appraised and evaluated based on what's in HR job description. So why would in the world we expect these people to be deviating willingly from what they're going to be evaluated based upon?
Yeah,
I respectfully disagree with what you're saying. As a hiring manager, I have a particular project I have to deal with, and I need people who can deal with this project. And when you're saying why someone will willingly learn, I find this statement absolutely ridiculous. The same way as doctors have continuing education and lawyers have continuing education requirements. In current environment, any IT person is expected to endlessly learn. Unless you're a COBOL developer who can stick with COBOL for the rest of your life, and even that probably is unlikely this time, you are expected by definition, by the fact that you choose to be in IT environment, the fact that you choose to earn your living as an IT person, to constantly learn. So when I'm hiring a particular skill set, it's by default, I expect that that person will be willing to learn anything else that I need him to learn. And his advancement and his professional growth will depend on his flexibility.
So Boris, here's a question to you. And this is, by the way, this is all very questionable, and we can have disagreements in this. Your expectation, is it explicitly stipulated in the job description?
Absolutely.
So
But I'll give you an example. I'm working in a cloud environment. I need very particular skill set because I have very particular project, and I need people who can just come and deal with it and then evolve as we go. If we change from Kubernetes to native, they will evolve. If we change from Jenkins to something else, they will have to pivot. But initially, I do not need a generalist who can be barely good in lots of things, but cannot be expert in anything else. Because when we say the teams have to be able to self-organize and self-evolve, you need people who within those teams can kind of guide self-organization. If you bring 10 people who have absolutely no idea what SQL is, and you expect them to
Boris, but Jean talked about generalists as somebody that has a specialization, but it's open. He, she is open to learn new skills, new specialization.
But that's exactly my point. Just by default, there is nothing to discuss because people who are not willing to learn new skills will be cast out. It's just reality. Look at the numbers of H-1B people in the country. They're hungry, they're willing to do anything, and they're learning like no tomorrow. So if we're not ready to compete with them, we'll be cast aside. It's just reality. And all wishful thinking that someone will recognize our internal beauty for the sake of keeping us around is just naive. If we cannot deliver what's supposed to be delivered, we'll be fine.
So Boris, I think you're probably using just different language, but you're using this. You're just amplifying the same point. So when we say a generalist, we do not imply someone who is a single skill set and nothing else. We're also not saying this person is barely able to do anything, but has very little expertise on everything. That's not what the definition of a generalist is. That would be a very superficial, technical person or whatever the domain.
Maybe a better word is like T-shape or something, or P-shape.
Yeah, T-shape sometimes it takes it's being taken out of context and misunderstood, but especially by first and second line managers, because they think that if T-shape implies someone who only has very little of expertise and lots of trivial expertise and lots of breadth, but not enough depth. That's what not a T-shape person is, in fact. But the point is slightly bigger here. So what I think what Boris was alluding to, people will be naturally weeded out. People will not stick around if they do not have any skills that are in support of work. That is absolutely true. And by the way, we don't need a manager. We don't need a line manager to single this person out. On the proper conditions, and these proper conditions ought to be created, this person will be easily weeded out and singled out. And if it does become an HR matter, someone just not willing to learn, somebody's not willing to pick up any new expertise, then this is really not an agile versus not agile question. This is just a question of an organizational fitness. The question becomes now, how the hell did this person get into the company in the first place? Did you actually, examine his or her technical skill set before they came in? But the point I was making, just to be clear, is that if you do not explicitly state at the beginning that someone is expected to learn and someone is coming into the very dynamic and high degree of learning environment, you may then be surprised why this person isn't interested in doing this. It may vary from a company to company, but if you are writing in your job description front-end Java developer and say nothing about you should be willing to learn other technologies or skills, then it would be ironic to expect this person to assume this. So
I don't think it's ironic. I think it's natural. By the definition of our environment and our industry, it's changing exponentially. It's changing every day. And anyone who thinks that he can stick to his initial skill sets and survive on this is absolutely naive and will be facing cruel reality.
Boris, but I think we're talking more about. I don't really know, but I think for me, it's about when I have like a backend developer and he says that he's only here to do some, more specialized backend work and do like more difficult backend work and not touch some other specialities. For example, I don't know, testing, automation, or something like that. Geiger says that, hey, I'm a backend developer and I should be utilized doing only backend tasks. This is like this case, not case that,
And then it will be up to you to decide what you want to do with this person, because down the road you cannot hire endless number of people on every subspecialty that you might need.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. This is why everyone is expected to be flexible and evolve in our specialty. I mean, if you're, I don't know, park ranger, maybe you learn your park and you live there for 30 years and you just show it around. But if you're IT developer, operations, something like this, it's by default, it's by definition, you're supposed to be learning, you're supposed to be certifying, and you're supposed to be able to demonstrate your value to the company, because no one can read inside your soul and see how nice and warm and fuzzy you are. People look at your resume and they do not know if you like cats or you hate dogs. They looking into the software skills.
So this is a good points. And by the way, this is not a conclusive conversation, folks. By the way, just to make sure everyone understands what this is. This is a way to provoke thinking and provoke discussions, right? The whole idea of having a model and having a number of people engaging in a conversation is to have perhaps a disagreement, and maybe a very inflaming disagreement, right? Like, for instance, Boris has a very strong opinion, and and Sebastian may have one, and I may have another one, and has some other views. Especially it's valuable when you get a few people from the same company, from the same organizational domain, coming together and discussing. What makes perfect sense within one organizational setting may have almost trivial meaning in the other organizational setting, right? For example, in investment banking, where bonuses and perks are very high, this variable could have a very strong effect. In the other organizational structure, in the other organizational settings where bonuses are trivial, this is going to be trivial. So this could also depend on individual personality and local cultures, right? Things may vary from Latin America to India to Eastern Europe to the United States. Now, and by the way, I'm trying to multitask. I see Marcy's ping on the Hackman versus Tuckman. You're right. I was actually referring to this one. This is not Tuckman. I think it's Hackman. I get those names constantly confused. What I was referring to with regards to actually, no, this isn't. I promise to add the image that I'm referring to in the summary page, the link that I shared, to show different states of individual of management maturity versus abilities of teams to take on more responsibilities. This is actually not the right image. This is relevant, but not directly relevant. Okay. Cool. Any other questions, folks? We got like 7 minutes remaining.
How to find generalists outside the company.
How to find a general. So this is another thing. I mean, again, I'm going to share just my view on this. You have to pay people right, and you will find people. This is one of the things that I usually mention when I talk about like a multi-site development and less. It is ironic to say that all the best SQL people are in Boston and the best backend Java developer in Bangalore. That's just ridiculous, right? You can find great people in both locations. You just have to make sure you pay right dollars for right skills. We oftentimes see these limitations and these constraints based on reporting structures that typically roll up to first, second line management. That's what, that's why Larman's laws 1 and 2 talk about the first and second line management that are local optimized to protect the status quo, right? So if you got SQL, senior SQL, like SQL lead or SQL manager, someone who is, responsible for all database people in Boston, it will be harder to find the same a person with the same skill set in a different location. And that's how you end up with teams that are artificially separated. There's a difference between multi-site development and distributed Scrum, for example. The former is okay, we can live with. The latter just creates artificial separation of individuals that should be together.
I have a pro tip to share. Lately, I'm experimenting with job ads with like a category of full stack developer, not like backend developer or front-end developer, but full stack developer. My thinking is that if somebody has like thinks about themselves as a full stack developer, they probably are open to learn other skills.
I actually would strongly agree with you. How many jobs have we seen out there that actually stipulate full stack developer? How many jobs have we seen out there that actually say experience with contributing to open source? When you see these kind of requirements in job recs, you will have a much higher chance of attracting good people. I mean, good people from your perspective. I mean, if you don't think these are good qualities, then of course, then you wouldn't be looking for those. And it's also another irony. Perhaps it's an irony, right? So a line manager may have very good view on what they want to bring in. Maybe, in fact, their view is pretty good. They understand what's required for the project, if it's a conventional way of working, maybe for product development, if it's an agile way of working. But when these requisitions flow through HR, and when HR becomes the first line of, defense to filter roles, I'm sorry, candidates, then it becomes a challenge. Worse yet, if it becomes a third party, like a vendor company that is responsible for procurement, and they do a poor job. So you might be spinning your wheels trying to get a good person in the door, but they go through multiple, channels of translation, and it just becomes a, dilutes quality of it. Anything else? Any other questions or comments, perhaps?
Jean, it's Holly.
Hey, Holly.
Hi. What's the best tool that you suggest? What are some tools that you suggest we use for the using this flow, using the system development system?
And on a good day, once we're back in the rooms, it's got to be like a whiteboard and and the marker. I'm sorry, the dry eraser. Dry erase marker, but I use a Miro. I use Miro for training, and this is a pretty slick tool. There are others. I mean, I don't work for them. I don't care if you use it or some like Miro. Yeah, you can
Great.
look. It's actually it's a pretty slick tool. When it comes to curing of pricing, it may become a little sticky. But if it's for corporation, they can buy licenses. I'm sure. There's another tool. It's called Miro. I'm gonna put it just as a. Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Any other folks? Any other questions or comments? Well, these are two different tools. Yep. Thank you, Marcelo. You pinging a few others. Yep. I agree. Those are the other two I heard of. I haven't used those, but well, anything else, folks? Any questions? Any comments?
Will you provide us a link to the recording?
Yes. So what I'll do, this is, in fact, if you didn't have a chance, you can scroll all the way up to the chat at the top. The recording will be here. In fact, there is already, place here where I can put a recording. There's really no nice way to take this huge canvas and give it at once. So I may have to chop it up and upload it in chunks, in pieces. So other things will be also available too. These are already standing links, so you can just grab them. And you can join my Slack channel if you want. I mean, maybe if I ping you on the Slack channel, this whole canvas, this may be high enough resolution for you. I'm worried about
Slack channel does the Slack invite doesn't work.
that's
It like
not a good thing. Then hold on one second.
maybe bad link or something, or maybe I'm only one.
This is going to be easily fixable. I'm just pinging again.
Yeah, no worries.
It refreshes itself. I think it becomes invalid from time to time. So this is Sebastian. I just pinged you another one. This may could be slightly different. This is it right here.
Yeah,
you can
works.
pick it up from the chat room.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you all for joining. Don't want to keep you on the phone for too long. Thanks for your comments, everyone who made any contribution. I appreciate it. Try to practice with this. Take one of your colleagues, grab some of your network friends, do it at work. Do it on a piece of paper. I mean, this is just a way to unpack what's not obvious, and whether you like it or you don't, it's up to you. I mean, you may or may not see what you see. But it's almost like the way we say it, once you see it, you cannot unsee it, right? You can challenge your own
better. If you don't like it, do it. If you
Mhm.
don't like it, do it better.
That's right. You may uncover some unknowns, and then you can tweak some of these. These are like your dashboard. You can tweak some of these variables upstream, and you will amplify results downstreams, or minimize them. So in that regard, it should be a useful way to control your own system. Okie doke. Thank you all for joining, folks. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'm going to stop the event, and we'll start recording. And I'll patch.
Thanks for putting this on, Gene.
Okay.
My
This
pleasure.
was great.
Thank you, Jeannie. Bye-bye.
Great.
Thank you.
Everybody
Thank
have
you
a
very much.
great day.